Okay, we got our Yamaha VXS cylinder head back on after resurfacing the cylinder head on our surfacing machine, Winona Van Norman belt surfacer, and after cleaning the head thoroughly. This is the number 4 cylinder compression. I always like to, setting these cam chains up is critical. Joseph, roll it over and get me cams lined up again. So we want the our mark, which is top dead center back there. There we go, that's close enough. And so we've got this number 1 piston up, and that's at the front where your deals are. And of course, here's your timing tensioner, which is critical to install that properly. Winding that thing up and setting it is a little challenging. You have to do it in a workbench, takes a couple of times. Then there's a release clip on it. You pop the release clip loose once it's in place, and that applies the tension. But you should tension it with a tool, stick a screwdriver in there and just tension it over to double check your chain. Now we roll the engine over by hand to verify that we've done the right thing, and we roll it over in the proper direction. And standing behind the motor at the PTO, we would be rolling this thing over to the left, counterclockwise. That tensions the left side of the chain straight down to its sprocket. This side has the tensioner on it that can relax on you. So to line these cams up, you get the camshaft. They got a little hole, an oil hole, and it lines up with the back of that cap. On this camshaft is the intake cam, right? So the intake camshaft lines up right there behind the second cap. That hole lines up with that mark. The exhaust camshaft lines up in front of its back cap, and that hole lines up with that mark. Now they're off just a hair right now, but if they're off at all, this thing will not run properly. They have to be dead on. So if that thing is just barely over to the side, I mean a tiny bit, then you've got this chain 1 tooth off, or half a tooth we call it. So there we go, we got that. So we just ran a compression test on the number 4 cylinder. Joseph switching to number 3 because we don't want to put in a motor that's got maybe a valve problem or piston problem. So, you know, it was good before, but that, you know, things change. So we want to make sure that we've done the best we can do to ensure we got a good motor before we put it in. We want to give it just as many rotations as we feel comfortable with, usually about 10. But that was about 8.
Okay, sorry.
Hit it again. Go ahead, hit it. Right? So we're about 175. So about 10 rotations, and I just count to 10. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maybe a little faster. These motors turn over pretty fast. Joseph counts to 8 or counts to 10 faster than I do. Is that my age?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's the number 2 cylinder. Okay, that's pretty close. We'd like to see plus or minus 10%. There could be a little trash on the valves. There could be a little bit of dirt in there that's causing the valves to not seal as well, so don't panic. If you're 5 pounds, 10 pounds off, that's fine. I mean, 10% of 175 would be 17.5 pounds, so we're 5 pounds off. That's nothing to worry about. That thing could probably be 25 pounds off, and I'd still start it up, because probably once it ran, or we take an air blower, blow in here while we're turning it and blow in the exhaust, it would come right back up. Unless you had valve problems. And if your cam timing was wrong, you'd be spitting air out like through another spark plug hole, and you certainly wouldn't have this kind of compression. You'd have some other problems. This is the number 1 cylinder. Sounds like our battery's getting a little low.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if your battery's running low, which ours is, go ahead and spin a little more just since the battery's low. See, we're coming up. So our battery is suffering just a little bit. All right, so that's lower than the other 3, right? So that's past our 10% margin. But I assure you, there's nothing wrong with that cylinder. Just by doing motors my whole life and having the cylinder head off and any debris inside of there, the cranking speeds, yada, 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 that's perfectly fine. If you get compression, that little bit of difference, put the sumbitch together and run it. Amen? All right, that's good for our compression test. Everything's cleaned out. Joseph's going to finish dressing this motor out, putting everything back on it. Then he's going to put some oil in it. Then he's going to install it in the ski. We're going to load test it. We're going to make sure it's good to go.